Hi, David Erdos with poems 18 and 19 from At the Gates. Tomorrow is March the 23rd and marks a full year in the British lockdown, and it will also mark the 200th poem that I've written across these three books. 100 daily pieces in the first book, David's Covid, 50 intermittent pieces in the second book, The Covidian Age, and the third book, The People's Prison, has been split into two sections. The first, The People's Prison, had 30 poems in, and the second section, At the Gates, has 20 poems in. So this is the 18th and 19th poem, or the 198th and 199th poem, which are offered under the collective title 241. The first poem is called 241, after a bus that journeys through a part of East London with lots of allusions and in-jokes. There's an in-joke in there about Canning Town, which it passes through, and also some of the people and ideas which I think are relevant to the experience we've been through. The second poem, which is called Tomorrow, is an introduction to perhaps the main event, or hopefully the main event, which I will write tomorrow and post perhaps in the evening. 241. The 241 bus route goes from Hermit Road up or down to Stratford, appropriate for a near year of seclusion in which sly forms of cunning have been canning us all into towns. Everyone would seem to have reached their own edge, their own East End, their spent city, as across the land their lost labours have felt as dead as Keir Hardie, who, thanks to COVID's creation, has left a spot for recreation untested, and a bus stop named for him, marking unseen trees and spaces, and ghosted by day, field and ground. As the Labour Party's founder, that Keir, and the new one now, breach two spectrums. The first held the bright aim and forces that were set to conquer and crush Tory weight, while the second still tries to prize space between the force pressing on us, and yet through that bulk and blunder can even common sense compensate. And so the bus journeys on, tucking the past and possible future deep inside its exhaust pipe. As fumes exude, we breathe badly and shudder through winds and sunbeams. The present as such doesn't help, as the present time is a blockade, and a blockage too, in which all are drifting and grabbing at driftwood hard down life's stream. We do not know where to go, or how best to get there. So, monstered and masked despite lockdown, people prowl empty high streets in search of the lives they had through daydreams. A custom house station haunts too, what with the price of European imports now rising, as we dislocate from the body of the European state the new way, will grant us all Hamlet's howl as the Denmark Street stop is arrived at. Kings of infinite space and failed queendoms falling through flaws, fears and futures in order to renegotiate piecemeal days. Appearing at Plaistow Broadway, the place where Brexit could be said to have found its origin, as the former home of the BNP, that dumbed horror was there at the root of fouled choice that first stoked the distrust that has virtually closed the channel, or indeed clogged the tunnel, that long-earthed English throat that sought accent and romantic kisses too, through French voice. All relinquished and blown as Windmill Lane moves towards us, and we are borne aloft while we're riding this imagined bus through the map that is divided, like Lear's, into three very separate kingdoms. And in ways that ape that man's madness, our former empiric need for self-love gets no clap. And so we arrive at Stratford, at last, having slouched through this torn part of London to see its eastern stage empty, and equal, of course, to Avon's. But the same tragedy taints, and instead of on the heath, each house rages. For cataracts and hurricanos, read riots, born within and without, as fear throngs. This can be felt in your mouth as your bus-sealed mask broadcasts breathing back to yourself, where performance is not so much an actor's technique as your task, so that you may know finally all about the role you've been given and the play you're in. This bus journey, which I have ridden on once, is mere stance. This is what occurs to me as I write on this day before my 200th lockdown poem. Nearly 1 year on, we were inmates, then extras next, then puppets. We do not even have our own face when we see each other. The 241 could be Charon's, for as the river Styx becomes road, death perfects. And yet life trundles still. I was on a 724 bus today, moving with need through torn landscape. Finally, after roadblock, I rushed to my own safety net. I embraced it, or tried, as I sat by a stream with a woman. And so, for that moment, freed from my cage, hope felt met. Tomorrow. Will there be parties as such? Or is this how prisoners mark their seasons? For March 23rd marks the sentence in which we were all scored and marched deep within. While some have continued to sink, others believe they've been floating. I wonder now, as they surface, genetically changed, how they'll swim. With a fin or gill, possibly. Or as only inmates can, across dreaming. And what, I still wonder, will we try to make of our cage? Or will tomorrow mean less than the day before, without difference? Perhaps these two poems and their inferred trails and trials mark an age in which the thought that I knew and once prized in life was finally confiscated. Now people walk out with no purpose, and while the gates have been opened, the water is both running out and still rising. So what of the prison we're fleeing? Well, that, my friends, still remains. David Erdos, March the 22nd, 2021.